Ah, yes, back when the future was green grass, blue skies, and floating fish. Hey guys, it's me Kyle. I make videos about design and art. About a month ago, I've been getting a lot of these nostalgic edits on my feed, which isn't out of the ordinary because for years now I've been getting these nostalgic edits from like Nickelodeon, Disney shows that we used to watch as kids. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that one video of Gibby fighting that one girl from iCarly. It always comes back every year.
I've been roaming around, I've been looking down, and all I see painted faces fill the pages I can't read.
But somehow this one hit a little bit differently. It unlocked like this visceral feeling where I was transported back to when I was 8 years old and I was playing on the Nintendo Wii while my little sister's watching Wizards of Waverly Place, and then minutes later subsequently having to process the death of Michael Jackson while I'm playing Pop Tropica while I look at my reflection in the Pop Tropica bathroom. Those were the times. As I saw more and more of these videos, I started wondering, what is this aesthetic and why does it make me feel so strongly nostalgic? Stronger than any other nostalgic trend from the early 2000s.
3, 2, Happy New Year!
Silly bands are bright-colored silicone shapes that stretch into bracelets.
I crushed the alien.
Hi, Billy Mays here. It was a manic Monday in the financial markets.
You'll be saying wow every time.
The Dow tumbled more than 500 points after two pillars of the street tumbled over the weekend.
Chia.
I want to see every call for their kid's birthday party. I'm the one that's
Senator Barack Obama of Illinois will be the next president of the United States.
The year is 2008, when the greatest fear of the Y2K bug was officially behind us. And that was basically when everyone thought that the computers would blow up and stop working after the clock hit January 1st, 2000.
Fears of the Y2K bug are keeping many people grounded.
But it didn't, and we were vibing, bro. 2000s was a time to be alive. And after surviving, it left us in this optimistic time where music, culture, and technology was flourishing. You go outside and everybody got that gelled up hair, the frosted tips, blonde highlights, the polo shirts, and the khaki shorts, all while walking down the street listening to music on their new iPod Touch. You know what I'm saying? It's the future, y'all. Seemed like it was only up from here, bruh. And if you were like me, you were probably like 7 years old at the time, and your life was more about coming home after school, adding to your silly band collection before browsing YouTube back when it looked like this, and being greeted by this picture when you log into your family computer. Wow, it was so magical, bro. I did so much stuff on that computer, you know. Voted for the Kids' Choice Award, played some Club Penguin. The world was really our oyster. Take me back. As I fell down the rabbit hole of all these different aesthetics of the early 2000s, I finally found the name for this elusive style that I was looking for. And although the style was ubiquitous with like daily living back in the time, now colloquially looking back, people refer to it as Frutiger Aero. The name actually derives half from Windows Aero, which was this translucent style of Microsoft Windows Vista OS back in the early 2000s, and it was known for its glass-like translucent UI design, where the icons and apps were shiny and had backdrop shadows giving them a three-dimensional feel. And it took place when all the default backgrounds looked like this. So just painting the picture for y'all. Back then, the idea of skeuomorphism was very popular in tech, which was a style that sought to emulate real-world objects that digital applications were trying to emulate. These days, icons are very minimalistic and almost pictograms, as users became more familiar with using digital devices. But back then, this was an unfamiliar technology. So designers sought to bridge the gap between reality and the real world. Think about how the floppy disk is the icon for the save button, the landline for the phone, and partially the reason why your phone makes a mechanical shutter sound even though your phone doesn't even have one. And now the Frutiger part, which I actually know as a design major in college, you know what I'm saying? It comes from Adrian Frutiger, who was a popular Swiss typeface designer who designed a lot of fonts and typefaces for a lot of tech UI at the time, like Windows OS and others. And now time to talk about everyone's favorite topic. It's time to go back in time and talk about the socio-economic state of the world. I know y'all love talking about that, you know. In a recent book called Y2K, How the 2000s Became Everything by Colette Shade, released earlier this year, she accredited the rise of the internet and the end of history mentality as primary contributors that made the era feel ecstatic, frenetic, and wildly hopeful. The term end of history that she's referring to was created by political scientist Francis Fukuyama in his 1992 best-selling book, The End of History and The Last Man. Following a world recovering after the end of the Cold War in 1991, this sparked an era of optimism as the world was freed of living under the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. So basically, the world was at an all-time high after decades of geopolitical turmoil and the fears of the end of the world, plus the new technological advancements of a promising new technological age. It must have felt like we as a society were finally reaching the most sophisticated, peaceful, and optimistic times. Hence the end of history feeling in the zeitgeist. And you know I gotta use that word zeitgeist. You know, this is my first video commentary video. Of course I gotta say it just like all the other ones. You know what I'm saying, bro? I definitely use that word on a daily basis. Shout out the zeitgeist, bro. Bro, put this video in the zeitgeist right now, bro. If you guys think this video should be in the zeitgeist, you know, drop a like, drop a comment, you know, hit that bell to never miss the next video. This cultural mindset of looking back on history in a retrospective lens was most embodied by another aesthetic that predated and coincided the rise of Frutiger Aero. Utopian Scholastic. If you were a child in the early 2000s, you know this style very well. Known for its collage design of biology, ancient history, and human anatomy, focusing on edutainment and the end of history approach to learning. I and a lot of others on the internet agree with the sentiment that this aesthetic always struck a childlike sense of awe and wonder of science and history as a kid. And as a kid, I remember being enamored by learning about stuff like the Amazon rainforest, ocean ecology, and geology. And of course those I Spy books that we would only get to read during our free time. And I felt this way due to the mystical influences of Utopian Scholastic that had a lot of impact on children from the early 1980s to the early 2000s. Similar to many technological trends and aesthetics, Frutiger Aero was very much tied to corporate trends and corporate needs. This meant that unlike fashion and other creative outlets, Frutiger Aero was very much determined by the top companies and what they thought the most innovative design was. And looking back, there were pretty much like three main companies that come to mind when I think of the pioneers of the Frutiger Aero aesthetic.
iPhone 3G. Compelling propositions to the consumer.
Computers at the time very much embraced the glossy, glass-like aesthetic for a lot of their user interfaces. Microsoft versions Windows Vista and Windows 7's computers were characterized by their glass-like menus and applications. Similarly, Apple, in iOS 1 through iOS 6, included glossy gradient apps that had more literal skeuomorphic icons. But there was this one tech product that is now seen as the forerunner for representing the Frutiger Aero aesthetics back in the early 2000s. And it's one that I have the most fondest memories of. By far one of the most influential pieces of media associated with the Frutiger Aero trend is the Nintendo Wii. Boom! Since the release of the Nintendo Wii in 2006, Nintendo sold over 100 million units worldwide. If you were like me at the time, you became immersed in the unique vibe of playing the Wii. The UI read as 2000s futuristic with the white-gray color scheme featuring those glossy buttons and gradients. I feel like a lot of UI at the time was a little more experimental and had more artistic liberties just because technology at that time was still emerging and a lot of people were unfamiliar with how to navigate digital products like the Wii. Given so, the Wii was optimized for accessibility, as the Wii emulated browsing channels on a TV. Also, this can be attributed to Nintendo being a Japanese company trying to appeal to the global market, as the UI was designed to be universally intelligible. There are a lot of skeuomorphic pictograms used to explain meaning, as well as a lot of visual instructions. Fast forward to today, and the newest console, the Nintendo Switch, was created for entirely different times. Times where almost everyone has a smartphone and interacts with technology on a daily or even hourly basis. This is reflected in the UI where designers can assume that users can infer how to navigate a menu. They don't have to rely so much on emulating things like navigating a TV or other reference points for users to understand how to navigate digital interfaces. In my opinion, this is the reason why a lot of technologies today lack personality and their former whimsy that a lot of their past iterations had. And you know I'm all about that whimsy. Speaking of personality, one of the most nostalgic parts of the Wii was the music, which is actually how I found out about Frutiger Aero being its own unique aesthetic outside of the wide Y2K aesthetic. There was just a period where I got a lot of recommendations on YouTube and Spotify of these Frutiger Aero music playlists to relax to. And I gotta say, like, it really brought me back, and that's when I started thinking. I was like, man, I do really miss that vibe. The music always had a sort of ethereal and hopeful vibe with a lot of mellow drums, arpeggiated chimes, and a lot of jazz and bossa nova influences. I think that the music paired with the UI always painted a picture of representing attitudes of peace, innovation, and optimism. And the Wii really stands out as a cultural landmark of the prevalence of Frutiger Aero during the early 2000s and its technology. Whenever I see a video reminiscing about Frutiger Aero and past aesthetics, there's always the top comment being, the future we were promised. And I know these comments are very much exaggerations, because as kids, I don't know if we thought in the future we'd be living in these neon green bubble houses in a grass field with the blue skies surrounded by wind turbines. But I think the sentiment still holds true. Compared to the current instability of the current age with fears of returning to an age of geopolitical unrest, I think that many young adults who were children during the early 2000s are missing that feeling of living in times of peace and optimistic for the future, finding comfort reminiscing about these past aesthetics like Frutiger Aero, Utopian Scholastic, and Y2K, and how it made them feel as a child. Because a lot of people in the younger generation feel like that their future prospects are worse off than the generations before them. And the price of housing, college tuition, rent, groceries, and mass layoffs continue to exacerbate people's lives. This current reality is at odds with the optimistic past that a lot of these children were brought up with, hence why I believe the future we were promised is such a widespread sentiment. These children that were raised with these optimistic design aesthetics were shown a world of curiosity, optimism, and peace, and thrown off into a world of uncertainty, instability, and political financial turmoil once they turn into young adults. As kids, we were taught to dream and dream big just for those dreams to be halted once we graduate. And like all design trends, they have their expiration date. It's agreed that Frutiger Aero spanned from the early 2000s to the mid 2010s, as Frutiger Aero was tied directly with corporate taste and what the top companies thought the most innovative and unique designs were. It would be subject to change. And around the mid 2010s, there was a major market shift in design taste across the globe.
iOS 7.
Athleisure is all the rage.
The smash hit mobile game app Pokemon Go has only been out for a few days, but it's already got millions following their smartphones to the most random places.
The era of simplification. Black and white, athleisure, white kitchens, the infamous gray vinyl flooring. Minimalism was here in our fashion, in our furniture, and in our technology. Out of nowhere, brands and apps started simplifying their designs and marketing campaigns. Icons would lose their glossy glass look and were replaced by 2D flat designs. This era was aptly referred to as flat design. And probably the most influential company that really pushed towards minimalism in their products was Apple. And if you had an iPhone back then, you probably remember the really jarring update of iOS 7, when all the icons lost their glossy gradients and drop shadows in favor of more simplistic and flat designs. I don't know why, but as a teenager, I was very much well onto the minimalism train. I was like, bro, it's so clean, it's so sleek, it's the future, bro, it's the future. And when I tell you I was really far gone, I was really far gone. In terms of fashion, I was really in the deep end, wanting to wear like all black and white with the stripes, with the gray sweatpants, trying to rock those Adidas NMDs and maybe Yeezys, bro. So basically, I was just trying to look like BTS in the Save Me music video. If you know the vibes, if you know, you know. And I even hated the most hated interior design choice right now with the white walls and the gray flooring, bro. With the white countertops, I was like, bro, it's so vibes, bro, it's so clean. I want to live in Captain Sparkle's mansion, bro. Come on now. Yeah, bro, I don't really know. It was crazy. A lot of people attribute the 2008 recession to waking up attitudes of simplicity and practicality in the general public, with mantras like less is more dominating the discussion, where a lot of companies and households had to make do with having a lot less money in the bank. During times where people were forced to live life with less luxuries, the following years seemed to embrace lifestyles of having less and simplifying our lives. Even though today the public's reaction to flat designs are either business as usual or really negative, little did they know that flat design would lead to an even more hated design style in the corporate design world. Corporate Memphis. Oh! Nah, bro, nah. This ain't it. A quick search online about corporate Memphis really gives you a general taste on what the public's opinion is on. Soulless, corporate, derogatory, filling them with indescribable rage. The goal of the style was intended to emphasize modernity, diversity, and playfulness, characterized by geometrical shapes and these people with really long limbs and really small heads. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of people hate it because it comes across as disingenuous coming from these really big companies. Like, even though all those things I listed earlier are good things. It's just weird when a company does it comes across as like fake, like putting on this hollow inclusive front just to appeal to the public and increase sales. And as the general public's opinion of corporations and CEOs have been decreasing over the years, if you know what I mean, the aesthetic seems antithetical to the reality of corporate life. But hypothetically, in terms of successful design principles, flat design does emphasize accessibility, reducing cognitive overload and visual clutter, as well as improving usability. However, it really stripped away what made each design era new and innovative. Just think about the 80s, how different that was from the 90s to the early 2000s, and how different all those design aesthetics were, and how each era was unique with different innovations during the time. And I feel like the flat design really took it away. I feel like the last 20 years since we started adopting minimalism and flat design, there hasn't been a real new breakthrough that really separates the aesthetics from the mid to late 2010s from the 2020s. That's crazy to say. Many companies, even to this day, are still simplifying their logos and branding. Just think of like Volkswagen and Mazda and other companies. I don't know, man. I'm not feeling it. I'm missing the ornate vibes, you know? However, there seems like there's still this general push from the public of wanting more unique and out there designs to really push the envelopes and like switch things up in terms of experimental design and branding and marketing. It's been 10 years since any major change within the collective cultural design landscape. And I think it's partially due to apps like TikTok, short form media, and hyper-individualized algorithms. It really split the public into different design niches and personal design preferences. Everyone's in their little separate bubble where they have their own micro trends and different stuff that's going on. And there's not really a big collective bubble like there was back in the day. And evidence of that is just thinking about the current memes. Like back then in the mid to late 2010s, once there was like a meme that was like kind of funny or something, like it would just spread like wildfire on the Instagram and other social media, and like everyone would notice, and then like all the brands start doing it. But today with short form media and like TikTok, memes and like cultural trends have really short lifespans. I feel like the trends these days, they like come and go, like in the span of like a couple days or like a week, and then it's gone, and then everyone forgets about it. So, you know, the landscape has definitely changed with the advent of TikTok and other hyper individualized algorithms. It's more personal, and it's not really like a collective movement like it was in the past. Although many argue that trends are cyclical, I feel like Frutiger Aero is more symbolic of the times that it was in. Times of innovation and cultural attitudes towards optimism. As time has progressed, I think that technology these days are more about efficiency and optimization. And now aesthetics like Frutiger Aero are seen as obsolete and inefficient. I do miss the early 2000s and how every product felt like it was innovating on the last.
What's a game sphere? Only the most sophisticated gaming experience ever created by humans, and it's spherical.
It is a hope of mine that maybe in the future there can be a design trend that is similar to Frutiger Aero, hopefully in a time that comes back to peace and being hopeful, where art and the human experience can be valued in the everyday digital products that we use. The moral of the story is that nostalgia is a very powerful tool that can make you miss things that you may have not even noticed in the moment, even things that you may have not even loved too much in the past. In college, I had a lot of conversations with my roommate Philip about how powerful nostalgia is as a force. That even inspired him to make a TikTok based off this nostalgic conversation that we were having about how much we missed this childhood restaurant called Hometown Buffet, bro, and it blew up.
I'm not a perfect person.
As the recent past trends of my childhood are starting to be documented and researched and given names, I find it really interesting learning about these past aesthetics. And I've come to really love these design aesthetics that I really overlooked when I was younger. After Frutiger Aero, I learned about so many more like Global Village Coffee House, Frutiger Metro, and a lot of others. So I'm definitely planning on making more videos about that and discussing different design trends and different stuff that happened in the past and other design related topics that I want to talk about. So let me know in the comments what design aesthetic or trend I should talk about next, and what you guys think about the whole Frutiger Aero era, bro. Did you like it? Was it bad, bro? Does it remind you of the dentist and those balloons with the fish in it with the hole in it? If it do, you're a freak, bro. You're a freak. You're a freaky, bro. But I support the freakiness, bro. So join the squad, you know what I'm saying? Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell if you don't want to miss another upload of mine. And thank you so much for watching. There's more to come, y'all. Peace.